I can never match the eloquence of Benjamin, of course, the Marshall McLuhan of the cloud. You know, I'm from Europe, and in Europe we care about such things as universal healthcare, universal childcare, bike paths, the state, and all those sort of things. So I'm gonna just it's gonna be a very short talk. I want to add to the bio that was read that we also published a book this year called called Can Jokes Bring Down Governments with Stroker Press, and our new book Black Transparency is currently in the making, and we're fast approaching the final copy deadline for that book. So hence my nervous. If I'm nervous, it's about that. And also we are teaching. Vinka is teaching in Arnhem. And I'm teaching at the Sandberg Institute in Amsterdam, currently teaching at Yale and based there for the semester. So I'm just coming from New Haven actually now. So, and then you immediately notice how this stack works in practice, because you get on the Metro North. The Metro North has just gotten new trains. The trains look exactly the same as the old Metro North, only they're more shiny. But the problem of the Metro North is not the trains, but the tracks. And those have not been changed. So we are reminded of the sort of Westphalian, the Westphalian geography that underlies our, our cloud. Okay, so we are the new nomads. Watches no longer communicate time, but rather the vital presence of wireless signal. In fact, a prototype for a watch that had to be done together with UCD, but okay, so this is a sort of ink that's sensitive to wireless. So the talk is called Precursor. Maybe we can get a little bit of the sort of yellow light off. Like it can be complete, it can be even darker. Great. And that one too, please. Maybe completely off. Great. Thanks. I'm going to point this one a little bit down. All right, good. Okay, but now I can't read my notes, but there's no problem. All right, I was gonna start actually this talk with a video performance of Judas Priest, Shabba Ranks, Death, and MIA, because I was looking for an appropriate image for accelerationism, and when you actually play the Death cover version of Judas Priest's song Painkiller over a Shabba Ranks video, you get accelerationism, and actually exactly the same happens when you play it over an MIA video. So I'm probably not going to do that. I'm going to give you a little. So here are the videos ready from Shabba and MIA, but I'm just going to play the song Painkiller, just the beginning, to give you a taste of how that would have been. And to set the stage a little bit. Can I have a bit more sound? Okay, let's. And why don't we play Shabba? So, and I hope you can trust me that it would work similarly well with MIA. So I'm going to return to the keynote. Sorry about the, I can totally, all right. So this is horizontal acceleration, total horizontal acceleration from Judas Priest to Shabba Ranks to Death to MIA. And accelerationism is techno-hedonism with a Hegelian edge. So what happens when you accelerate horizontally? You drive faster and faster and ongoing. You might drive yourself off the edge of the earth. That's technological progress. So we are driven so fast and that we start to believe that the earth is flat and we can fall off it. So we are almost driven into the arms of kind of medieval and tribal beliefs again. Accelerationism touches on the coexistence of the virtual and the visceral, the terrain and its cloud, to name but a few of the layers of which, according to Benjamin, there are no less than 7. And then there's also another term next to accelerationism, and that is stacktivism. And stacktivism, hashtag stacktivism, is the supporting neologism of pirates and tinkerers who are interested in these 7 layers of the stack as political categories. So here's another version of the stack. So Benjamin's book is going to be published by the MIT Press. And if you turn the MIT Press logo, you get 7 layers. And we are trying to push this to be the cover for the stack. Of course, the original MIT Press logo, masterpiece designed by Muriel Cooper. So that was vertical acceleration, and of course, then we move into, that was horizontal acceleration, and then we move into vertical acceleration. And then you could say that if you hop through all those layers, like the cloud, you know, the physical geography, I can't remember all of them, but anyway, there are 7 of them, you have coherence. And one example of an attempt to design coherence is Iceland's attempt to create a sort of really interesting political legal climate for data. This was introduced after the financial crisis in Iceland. And you could say that the financial crisis was an accident of which the possibly fortunate consequences were mostly contained in Europe. Actually not for the better, but in Iceland the government fell and the banks all went bankrupt and they could basically start over. And one of the things they started to introduce was very interesting data laws that would basically could attract international customers, and your data would never be taken down. So Airbnb, for example, had they had their data in Iceland, they would not be eligible to a US court order. Next to that, also they have excellent energy situation. So that is called together, you know, you could call that resilience. You have like a forward-looking censored internet freedom climate with no censorship, and you have like natural energy that together, you know, we call resilience. So we, together with IMI, which is the think tank that's behind these legal reforms, we've been cooking up proposals to talk about the Icelandic cloud. And quickly those proposals turned into actually looking at the connections, the vertical connections that exist in the stack. Basically the landing point of the undersea cables, and how is Iceland connected to the rest of the world via these cables. And these cables have really funny names. For example, one is called Denise, and that stands for Denmark and Iceland. And the other one is called Faroese, which stands for Faroe Islands and Iceland. And one connects Iceland to Europe via Denmark, and the other connects Iceland to the UK. And it's there that the British Secret Service directly wiretaps these cables. So from a vehicle that talked about Iceland, this campaign actually became a vehicle that talked about the sort of wider context in which, you know, the stack is operating. That also involves the movement of an individual called Edward Snowden, who leaked the entire NSA internal memoirs to The Guardian, and then flew from Hong Kong to where? And then you saw the reminder, you know, that, you know, despite the fact that we have airplanes, we also have people that control the airspace. So his only routes would be to go via Kazakhstan, or to go directly to Moscow, which is what he ended up doing. So also here, there's a potential to create endless stacks, vertically cross-sectioning the stack. So in a way, you could say that, you know, there is a strange coherence now to saying certain things that are kind of slightly absurd. So this is a project that we're doing for a New York-based client. So, and I won't say which client, because you're supposed not to think about the client, you're supposed to think about the Western Sahara. So Snapchat, Swarovski, Western Sahara. Balenciaga, Stuxnet, Western Sahara. Foreign Affairs, Google Street View, Western Sahara. The New Aesthetic, 4G Networks, Western Sahara. Montevideo Convention, Domains by Proxy, Western Sahara. The Economist, Fatima Al-Qadiri, Western Sahara. Those are all vertical cross-sections through the stack, basically. So with those vertical cross-sections, you can make any message work, and people will understand it. Because I am actually quite sure that almost everyone in this group here together understands each of these trios, although it's hard to say why. So of course, now that we've got your attention, because we've got your attention with Balenciaga, because people don't know about the Western Sahara, but people do know about Balenciaga. Now that we've got your attention, Morocco is committing political and humanitarian crimes along its southern border. Because there, they have built a wall out of sand that's all kinds of Moroccan soldiers have to continually sort of keep putting sand on because it's very windy. And beyond that wall live the unrecognized people of the southern Sahara who want a state of their own. And they live in this sort of unprofitable, unfurtive section of the Western Sahara. Okay, so that's one of our current projects, basically. So I got a little bit of a set of notes here that I will sometimes read from, and they are mostly notes from the forthcoming Black Transparency book. So this is a diagram from an e-flux essay that we did, Captives the Cloud Part 2. And this is basically a diagram that is a reproduction of a cross-section of the current internet regime as it was drawn by the legal scholar Michael Frumkin. And this man, Michael Frumkin, sees on the one hand, he sees the so-called cypherpunk dream, and he says the cypherpunk dream may never have been a reality. It may have been always a dream. And on the right-hand side, there's the Data's empire. And Data's empire is basically a techno-managerial framework for life on Earth. Cypherpunk's dream cares about European values like anonymity, that sort of things. And basically what Frumkin says is that even though the cypherpunk's dream was never completely a reality, it inspired another reality, which is where you have much more proprietary systems, where you have control, where you have the cloud and all those things. And what he says that this stands for is actually, bad news, the renaissance of the state. So Facebook connected to the Google, connected to the government. And this is where Metahaven has always been a studio that was kind of obsessed by the state, and we got a lot of bad press for that because people said to us, like, okay, we got YouTube now, why are you guys talking about the state? Because it seems like really kind of rudimentary. We kept saying like the steam engine is really better than or it's more relevant than the nano engine, but actually the state is one of the underlying realities of this sort of boundless cloud. Right, and there we have to speak a little bit about the NSA, I guess. So this is new swag, new T-shirts for WikiLeaks that we're doing. We are periodically designing merchandising for them, and these are the new series. So we had gray T-shirts before, now we have black T-shirts, and the print is larger than ever, and the bit.ly link is basically just a link to wikileaks.org. So these T-shirts will be on sale in Germany soon, and soon, like now in Baden-Baden, which is in the south of Germany, and then later in Berlin. All right. Have you been to Baden-Baden? No. Me neither. But it's a very rich city, that must be said. So this is the, who is this? This is the series creator of The Truman Show. And this man has a panopticon view on the life of Truman. So in the Truman Show, eventually the series director makes an emotional appeal to Truman, trying to convince him that reality out there is no better and no more real than reality inside the giant suburban biosphere dome that was built for him. Truman's world is a world without visible signs of government. There are only signposts and warnings and red tape at the edges of its livable reality. So government for Truman is the drone-like perspective of the series director, and isn't the point of view offered by the NSA, the US National Security Agency, similarly semi-comforting. The message is a lullaby. All is fine. General Keith Alexander, who will soon part with the agency after a taxing time at the helm of the spy boat. And that means a few months of Snowden revelations that have exposed to the public some small portion of what this agency does to the internet. He begins almost every other sentence with the phrase, "from my perspective." And that is totally indicative of the series director in The Truman Show, of course. So he also says other things like, so it says born 1951, 4-star general, and he says other things like, in the next 2 to 5 years, cyber will double. There's the iPad, mobile phone, Skype, networks, and apps. Those are the sort of things that he says. And he claims that the NSA is about saving lives, as if it were a virtual ambulance rushing to rescue the digitally wounded. He'd brag about the NSA's tremendous capabilities in the manner that a middle-aged computer room systems manager does about his Apache server. Pre-Snowden, Alexander spoke in full military attire, and post-Snowden, he left the more ornate outfits at home, trying to look like a normal guy, one of us more blue-collar than white-collar. So he is basically stuck in this, in between a few different roles. He is almost this systems manager, he's a concerned dad, he is a kind of almighty Stalin, and he's also the world's overly attached girlfriend. And his West Point, this is ironic, because his West Point classmate was David Petraeus, celebrity general, and he fell from his zenith after a sex scandal embodied by secure, so-called secure email by Gmail, with his mistress Paula Broadwell, and being found out in no time by the incredible capabilities of the state that was supposed to disappear. So the internet, you could say, began, as a place too complicated for nation states to understand, and it ended up as a place which only nation states seem to understand. That is a kind of tremendous shift in perspective. Cloud giants, Google and Yahoo, are, in their own words, outraged. Yet, they're helpless bystanders while US spy agencies, extraterritorially, permissionless, and aided by the Brits, who do the really bad stuff, break into the data center cables, and just to find out what everyone is saying, and if the next bin Laden might be out there posting kitten videos on YouTube. Germany and Switzerland cash in on their secure clouds. Iceland is also trying to do that. Russia fortifies its digital walls, incarcerates Pussy Riot, one of them in Siberia, offers asylum to Edward Snowden, with Vladimir Putin the world's powerful person #1, according to Time. So recent developments show more than anything the deep divide between various governmental perspectives on the internet and the, by definition, transnational and borderless nature of the network itself. Yeah. Oh yeah, this is the searchlight moon from the Truman Show. So indeed, we are approaching a situation where you could say that the freedom of the offered by the social network in regions where the social network where the servers of the social network are not reachable by certain governments, results in a certain freedom. You could talk about the Arab Spring, where Facebook indeed was uncensorable by Mubarak and other leaders in North Africa. But for many people of us who live in the sort of supposedly already liberated world, we're creating a face state. So you could say something about that. You could say that every society gets the drone that it deserves. So the more physically politicized a society is, the more physically distinct its drones are. So in a fully politicized society, you get a drone that is really a plane with, like with an armed plane, right? So then you get a predator drone. And if you think the internet is a free haven for wild ideas, the NSA is there to remind you that it is in fact like Antarctica, a cake that is divided and eaten by the state. But if you live in Sweden, your favorite drone is Facebook. Your 2,000 to 3,000 best friends, and so on. So you got the idea of self-censorship there that takes over. All right. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our recent project, Black Transparency, where we try to engage ourselves with a number of people who we think are doing interesting work in, trying to tinker things otherwise. And this is basically, it was for us very important that these are not robots, these are people. So one of them is Samari McCarthy. Actually, we could go through them and then you'll see them. So one of them is Amelia Andersdotter, who is the youngest member of the European Parliament for the Swedish Pirate Party. Another person was Alexa O'Brien, who basically on her own covered the Bradley Manning trial. And another person is Mari McCarthy, who's Icelandic and who has been working for the last 3 years in the interface between law, society, and technology. So let's watch a little bit of his Skype interview. Okay, now the controls are gone for this video. That's not nice. Why is that? Spacebar? Nothing. Okay. It thinks, okay. I think we're going to miss out on the interview. No problem. We have other things. All right. So one other element that was part of Black Transparency was what we called weaponizing the dark glamour of new clouds. So what are the new data centers? What are the data centers of the future? Because we're interested in architecture, we're interested in the architecture of the data center. And one of them was this extraterritorial data center where Anonymous would become a data host, basically. So under Liberian flag, the container ship in international waters, this is a kind of legal, cyber legal 1.0. And this is basically a kind of modular version of what Google is trying to do with those big barges. But of course, anything that Google does falls under US jurisdiction. So you can, even if Google would have servers on the moon, it would be considered a US territory. So there's in a way you could say you could go anywhere with this data, but it will always resort under a regimen that brings it back to basically Virginia. Another model was a circular data center that could be located on the border between Norway and Russia. And that is one of the most strategic borders that we have in Northern Europe, because Norway is not part of the EU and Russia isn't part of anything. And that together, you know, that data center that would sort of half sit in both jurisdictions could really work, we think. So, and how about failed states? Les fleurs du mal géopolitique. And our forthcoming little piece for e-flux has a lot about stuff about failed states. It should be noted that the term failed state is a normative categorization which presupposes the institutional characteristics of Western statehood as the one legitimate form to which all states should ascribe. That, of course, is one of the sort of geopolitical fictions that is now sort of increasingly falling apart. Okay, I'm not going to talk for too long about failed states, but these are, all the red zones are the so-called failed states. So that a failed state is a state that has no control over its borders, has no centrally administered rule of law. And we are interested in the failed state from the perspective that it's such an image of how the state actually, what the state actually has become. Like to some extent they have all failed, but also that perhaps the failed state as a place where the institutions that that are basically undercutting our popular sovereignty are sort of disappearing. So, you know, instead of seeing this as a negative thing, we could also look at that as a positive thing. And that means probably that a much more mobile notion of data center might be appropriate here. For example, this that we really built, that is a nomadic data center that can basically go anywhere and is specifically fit for desert conditions. Right. So I'm going to close with a little video piece we recently made, and then that's it.
This is largely incoherent. This is the blinking cursor of our silence. Here's democracy, and then there's what protects democracy. An irredeemable machine of mental murder, a national security state in a state, a law of silence. Leaders assure us that all is well, that we do have the values of democracy, and that its weaponized protection keeps everybody safe and free. But these protective operations are themselves secrets. The executive means accrued to carry them out can be used to different ends. The entities of weaponized protection care for their own survival before everything else. They are just like humans. Silence and invisibility are the principal currencies of our utopia. Soon, everything will be a secret. But what about ourselves? Aren't we silent ourselves? We haven't said anything in a long time. We battle, we throw Molotov cocktails, fight the police, and dance in the wings of a government airplane. We look into our phones, which look into our lives. The bare possessions of a non-person living in a non-place. A laptop, a backpack, a night with friends, an on and off relationship, a temporary job, a trove of secrets. We have a non-plan. All we do is show that we still exist. We are the opposite of blind. We have absolutely nothing left but our vision. Economies liquefied. It seemed as if their material bases dissolved. Wealth became an airplane routed around the world. Value became a global architecture of tax havens and hedge funds. The name of the perpetrator of this crime is technology in the hands of someone. Politics and technology together create ideology, that which seems inevitable, that which is never followed by a question mark, that which comes first after the blinking cursor. I. The Internet both disintegrated and rejoined the structures of daily life. The borders of the world gave into shapelessness. The old world began to lose its structure, and a new world covered it like a second skin. A network, a set of nodes that are equal, a simple fact of life, a new beginning, a public space, a secret pocket world. Together we fall deeper. Nothing is to end our ecstatic conquest. Undoing all that was said and done before we came, unseeing everything with our eyes. We do not live in the same place. We weren't introduced. Please don't send us flowers. Send secrets. Once, governments were proud that they had secrets. Secrets were the preserve of privilege and glamour. The modern state claims to believe in transparency and openness. This obliges the state to hide the fact that it has secrets. Imagine what a whistleblower experiences as she exposes the previously unseen interior of the state. Whistleblowers reveal not the excesses and the crimes of the system, even if what is revealed are plainly crimes. Whistleblowers expose the system's normal operations, the way it works every day, and the way it agrees with itself in doing so. As they expose the state's interior, leakers are pathologized by the media as narcissistic egomaniacs seeking attention for themselves. Informing the public becomes aiding a foreign power. The world turns around its axis into playback. Plato's cave is now classified. We shine light on the writings on the wall. Paranoia is historically cast as the out-of-control frame of mind of a madman dictator, the pathology of an individual authoritarian, imposing his ferocious will on subjects which must continuously be monitored for secret moves. But paranoia is infrastructure. It is logistics. It is software and hardware. It is uniformed guards. It is mouse clicks and coffee mugs. It is the framed photograph of a spouse. Paranoia is the systematic and robust application of sheer technological possibility, lubricated by a melting empathy, so that law indeed gets rewritten by those who impose it. Law in the hands of those who oppose it is just a piece of paper that says something. A whistleblower in the eyes of those who oppose it is a mere stand in the way of the inevitable, a traitor. Enthusiasm for the drone leads to enthusiasm for the drone that takes decisions. Pattern recognition and algorithms are replacing ethics. The capacity of our computers to store everything makes us forget the question of whether anything should be stored at all. The simplest question becomes the most daring vision. Paranoia prepares its own terrorist plots, which it then prevents. In scanning the entire internet for who connects to who, paranoia sweeps up everyone. Everyone is a suspect, and everyone is in everyone else's social graph. The internet's cables are compliant with the infrastructure of paranoia. The answer, encryption of all communications, will provoke another backlash. We will hear that those who encrypt are the terrorists. Paranoia's answer is always the same: more. No government, and no man indeed, was ever seen voluntarily letting go of a technological possibility that was ready and available to him. Computers, handheld devices, and information networks keep us company night and day. Paranoia wants to survive. Institutions to protect others become institutions to protect themselves. When cracks appear, alternatives to the dominant order can gain strength invisibly until they emerge onto the geopolitical stage with no apparent precedent. There is no transparency without enlightenment. With the Industrial Revolution came the glass palaces. Life without secrets found its form in architecture. Under transparency, the state loses the informational privilege that allows it to maintain itself. Black transparency is involuntary transparency.
You're now listening to A-Rod Music.
There is a curfew. The statues, squares, and monuments are no longer ours. They are still as images. All memory has been seized. Our message is silence. Our rage is mute. The idea of cyberspace posed a line of separation between the internet and the real world. Cyberspace would be a separate universe, created by people, enabled by technology, and occupied by information. Geopolitically, it would be like the sea once was. an unregulated and fluid space where ordinary rules need not apply. The internet and life are one. A hot and dry desert wind. This is our failed state. All we do is show that we still exist.